Okay, hiya. I'm Roanna from Resisting Hate, and with me today is Fiyaz Mughal from Tell Mama. If there are any viewers who don't know who Fiyaz Mughal is, he is the founder of support group Tell Mama, which focuses on targeting anti-Muslim hate and supporting the victims of discrimination and prejudice. Mr. Mughal is also the founder of Faith Matters, an organisation that seeks to bring different faiths together in the common goal of unity and peace. In addition to these projects, he has been appointed to the Holocaust Memorial Day charity, which ties into both his interfaith work and his personal and professional opposition to anti-Semitism. So thank you, Fiyaz, for taking the time to talk to me today. Tell me, to get started, how did you get interested in multi-faith work?
Well, actually, the interest happened many years ago. I remember, I've been involved with communities for 20 years now, so a very long time. But really around 2001, 2002, when there was disturbances and issues taking place in the Middle East and Israel, Palestine, and actually we had to find ways where we could kind of bridge, talk, discuss, dialogue, and actually find positive relations. So that was the basis on which I effectively set up Faith Matters, which was Muslim-Jewish relations work. And it's been something that's always been close to my heart. So that's how I came to it. And I find both communities, I think, moving towards each other much more than they have been over the last decade. So there's real positive developments and real positive movements. However, the Middle East still obviously has the ability to cause fractures, and we've just got to watch out for that and keep the good work going here.
Absolutely, yes, totally agree with you. So there must be challenges involved in this then, challenges involved in trying to bring together people of different faiths toward a common goal of unity. What kind of obstacles have you faced in doing this?
Well, actually, there are a number of obstacles in trying to bring communities together. The first thing is, obviously, there are parties who have vested interests, whether it's politically or in terms of even resource. There are vested interests in trying to keep, sadly, people apart. That's one thing. We also have a changing environment where, sadly, again, seems more angry people around. Whether it's because of social media or the economic climate or Brexit or whatever you want to call it, but our country seems to have, in a way, turned a corner where there seems to be a bit more anger within communities and a bit more finger pointing going on. And so part of that is also a potential barrier. The fact is there's less patience in society. We're finding that's a potential barrier. And last but not least, one of the key areas, which really is, I think, one of the biggest barriers, is really around social media and generally around the way that the media wants to also elevate and exacerbate issues and tensions. Sometimes they're small but sell papers, and to get clickbait, newspapers will exacerbate that. And so that doesn't help in terms of community relations.
No, I can see your point there, yes. Okay. So sometimes there's a perception that the high-profile work that you do for a Muslim charity means that you must have a pro-Islam agenda. Is that the case?
It's a really good point, really good question. The answer is no, we're not pro-Islam, or clearly we're not anti-Islam. The fact is we don't do religion. The fact is we're not interested in promoting religion. That's not the nature of our work. That's the work of other organizations if they want to do that. That also means that we're not going to take positions against people if they have personal issues against any religion. If they have personal views against any form of faith, that's not something that we work upon, act upon, or try to change. We're interested in those people who literally target, focus on, and malign members of Muslim communities because of hatred towards Muslims. So our work is really focused on the individual. It's not focused on theology, religion, or religiosity. So one thing, and I'm glad you mentioned this, we need to be very clear is, we're not a Muslim charity. 80% of my colleagues are non-Muslim, 80% of them. We're not Muslim charity, but we are focused on countering hatred and intolerance towards Muslims. As the CST does with Jewish communities, so we do with Muslim communities. It doesn't mean that we also don't assist people who are beyond Muslim communities. We've had trans Muslims come to us for help, and we've helped them. We've had gay Muslims. We've had African Caribbean women who are Christian come to us for assistance. We've had members of the Pakistani Christian community come to us for assistance when they've been targeted for hatred, and we will help anyone and everyone. So it's a really good point you raise, because people suddenly think, well, because we deal with anti-Muslim hatred, we must be defending Islam. No, we don't defend religion. We won't defend Islam, but we will defend individuals who are targeted because they are Muslim.
Okay, so I think possibly then some confusion out there about the values. And what would you say are the core values that drive you and this work that you're doing?
This is fundamentally human rights work. This is about the protection of individuals. This is the protection of the dignity of individuals. It doesn't matter who you are. We will defend and stand in solidarity with anyone in relation to standing up for their rights so that they live free from targeted hatred. We don't get into political quagmires about Israel and Palestine. It's not what we do. That's not our role. We don't get into political debates and discussions around who's wrong or right on political issues. But I just wanted to say that actually this is really about human beings coming together. This is about saying that we should live freely. We should be who we want to be. And if we want to also change religion, change characteristics of who we are, then you should have the right to do so. If somebody wants to leave religion, they should have the right to do so. Those are fundamental human rights principles. We defend them, and we will continue to defend them. So in a way, if people see us as standing here as people who should defend Islam, they've got the wrong organization. We are people who will work with others to defend their human rights.
Fabulous, that's really clarified that. Thank you, I appreciate that. Okay. So you're also, in addition to your work with Tell Mama, you're on the board of the Holocaust Memorial Day Trust. So how did this come about? And do you find that there is some resistance to remembering the Holocaust within Muslim communities?
So I've been a trustee for 3 years, and it's an honor to be a trustee of an organization that is doing some phenomenal work raising the issue of the Holocaust, because we have a film called Denial that's out there, which is being released tomorrow. But there are deniers of the Holocaust as there are deniers of genocides like Srebrenica. Sadly, they exist, and sadly, they also have a voice with social media. So we need to be robust, and we also always need to put the facts across. And this is what HMD, Holocaust Memorial Day, does. It puts a flag right in the heart of the sand, as they say that these are facts, they took place, that this kind of genocide should never take place. But also it gives a clear understanding of the way when society starts to break down, it gives us a clear picture of what to look out for as to the potential for future genocides taking place. So HMD does some very, very important work. They also focus on Rwanda, Srebrenica, and other genocides. So it's really proud to be part and associated with this really, really incredible work. So one of the biggest things that I think that has impacted upon me in being a trustee of Holocaust Memorial Day has been actually listening to victims, to those people, the survivors who survived 4 or 5 years in concentration camps, who kept themselves going during the darkest periods of time. And I think for me, it's a personal reflection of how we take so much for granted the rights, the equality rights that we have in this country, where so many didn't have a single element, a shred of a human right within Germany at that period of time. And so this work is extremely important because human nature is such that it forgets what takes place just even a decade ago. Rwanda happened, Bosnia happened, other genocides sadly will happen in the future, and human nature is that we seem to forget. And I think the work of HMD is always making clear that we can't forget. We need to reflect, we need to understand, we need to digest the fact when society really does start to break down and when dictators do take over, how we can challenge the sense of autocracy, which, for example, Hitler brought to Germany. So really important work. I'm proud to be associated with it, but also on the question you said of anti-Semitism within sections or small sections of Muslim communities, sadly, there are. We can't get over that fact. The fact is, during the Gaza crisis of 2014, when the war happened in Gaza between Israel and Palestine, some of our Twitter feed in Tel Mama started filling up with anti-Semitism. And that was because of some of the people that we were following. We had to delete those. We had to unfriend them. The volume was quite significant, and I have to be honest, it was quite sickening what I saw in terms of the anti-Semitism that was coming through Twitter feeds. So the answer is there anti-Semitism? Yes. Is the term Zionism sometimes used as cover for anti-Semitism? The answer is yes. And these are very real problems. And they are problems where we have to tackle them head on. We have to be robust and say, not only is it not acceptable, we need to challenge those people who try to use words like Zionist as cover for anti-Semitism. And we also need to be very clear that where there is anti-Semitism within Muslim communities, and I do this quite regularly, that we challenge it and openly challenge it. There's no point in hiding behind the sofa and saying that actually we fight equalities when actually anti-Semitism stares us in the face. So the answer is it's troubling. The answer is it's not gone away. The answer is it's there. The answer is people are trying to be more clever in hiding it. And, people have different views as to what Zionist means to them. A member of a Jewish community can be smeared with the term Zionist because nobody knows what they're about. But just this kind of word is thrown into the mire as a way of deflecting any kind of legal recall, as a way of basically deflecting any kind of charge against the individual. Then I find that nauseous, and I find that very toxic, and we need to challenge it.
Totally agree with you, yes, absolutely, yeah. So obviously there are some challenges. So what are the challenges that you see in the future about how people try to divide Muslims and Jews?
Well, I think one of the biggest challenges is a presidency of Trump, and positions being taken on Israel-Palestine will be used by either side to cause divisions or even to cause irritation. So the reality is the presidency and the positions on Israel-Palestine are going to be causing waves and are going to cause distraction between both communities. I think there are also going to be some significant issues when there is military activity in Gaza again. So, military action may well be on the table. When that happens, there will be tensions again. Sadly, those tensions will rise. I hope and I pray that I don't see what I saw. I was talking before about the Twitter feeds. I hope I don't see some of the anti-Semitism coming from sections of Muslim communities. And by the way, it's not just about anti-Semitism. I also saw anti-Muslim hatred coming from some small sections of Jewish communities. So I'm saying that both sides have to be very, very careful that they don't take positions that further antagonize and that further create problems and issues.
Well, yes, absolutely, yes. So Holocaust denial and so-called revisionism has had a lot of press recently, particularly as you mentioned with the new film Denial about to come out. What are your views on Holocaust denial?
Well, Holocaust denial is one of the worst forms, I think, of victim abuse, primarily because victims are denied their experience. Second of all, it denies a part of the history, however bad that is, of a community. Third, it attempts to marginalize the experience of individuals who have suffered such great persecution, and actually by marginalizing their experiences effectively dehumanizes those individuals and that community. So I think it's one of the most toxic forms of hatred that enacts itself, that shows itself through the actions of individuals who are deeply radicalized in many instances by neo-Nazi and extreme far-right rhetoric. That's not to say it's just coming from neo-Nazis and far-right individuals. It's sad to see, but recent conferences in places like Iran around revisionism on Holocaust history has been problematic. And so, there are also elements within the Middle East where succor has been given to revisionists around the Holocaust because it's played to and pandered to political views. And that, I think, is appalling. It's abysmal. Within the Middle East, particularly within the Middle East, such people should not be given quarter, should not be given the opportunity to come and spread their poison and their revisionism.
Okay. So no doubt, since you work on tackling anti-Muslim hatred, you must have come across people who may be anti-Semitic and who come across the work of Tell Mama thinking that Muslims could be an audience for their anti-Semitism. Is this something that you have encountered?
Quite sadly, we have encountered the very fact. We've had individuals who basically have approached us thinking because we work, as you said, on countering Islamophobia, we may have, in some instances, some kind of bias towards their views, which is quite pathetic and quite perverse.
Very much so, yes. And also I think the problem of self-radicalisation, people who sometimes start out to be normal and normal views often radicalise themselves to the point where they start to develop extreme views, which must be a concern as well.
Indeed, it is a concern. And we've seen that, people that have engaged with us and said, can we be helpful? And we've said, well, give us some material to know a bit about yourself. And they seem perfectly reasonable, but over time, you suddenly realise what they're posting up on websites and other material and other areas are particularly problematic. And so, you can't tell where people are coming from, but you can certainly work your way through it. And as soon as you find out that there's a problem, that time to disconnect is very clear there.
So do you find that that being head of a support organisation that tackles anti-Muslim hatred, it's assumed that you must have anti-Jewish views, and how do you deal with that?
I think there are people who, because we work on with Muslim communities and tackling anti-Muslim hate, there might be some succor or there might be some room for their views to be promoted. It makes me sick to think that there are people who have such a simplistic and barbaric view of life, and I use the word barbaric because if people hold an opinion of another community and which is extremely negative and in instances bestial, because these are quite bestial thoughts about other communities, then they are approaching the wrong organization and they are certainly approaching the wrong individual by coming to us. How anyone can think that because we work on tackling anti-Muslim hatred that we would in any shape or form have any form of a resonance with their views is beyond me. Just because people work with Muslim communities doesn't mean they're anti-Semitic. Just because people work with Muslim communities doesn't mean that they're anti-LGBT. In fact, I have been vocally attacked both within sections of Muslim communities and beyond sections of Muslim communities. So within and beyond around my stance of tackling LGBT hatred. I have stood up against anti-Semitism. I have stood up against trans hate. I have stood up against a number of things.
Okay, so interestingly enough, we've actually seen the exact opposite allegation levied at you, that you are in fact a Zionist. How would you respond to this?
Well, this is the bizarre nature of what we're dealing with. If you're just trying to take a path of respecting human rights, particularly in this field of tackling anti-Muslim hatred, as you said, some people may think, their anti-Semitic views may have resonance. On the flip side, if you say that actually, for example, anti-Semitism, Holocaust denial, use of the term Zionism, targeting of Jewish communities in very subtle ways, assuming that Jews have power and enormous wielding power in government, when you tackle these kind of tropes, you then get individuals who make charges, as some silly individuals have made, that suddenly we're Zionists. That actually, because also we have a Jewish share, that we have to be Zionists because the Jewish share used to work with the Community Security Trust. The reality is they have no clue.
So a lot of the charities and anti-hate groups that we have contacts with are very concerned about the upsurge in neo-Nazism. Can you tell me about your thoughts on the increased popularity of far-right and Nazi movements in Europe and the US?
Well, certainly within Europe, far-right groups have pretty much been using the internet and using social media to really mobilize. And given the fact that we've had the refugee crisis, they've used that as a focal point to mobilize. The fact is we've not had much disruption of some of these groups within Europe. We've not had real government focused and organized disruption of these groups, which means that actually they've been allowed in many instances by default to ferment. It is a concern. Clearly within Europe we've got many more fragmented neo-Nazi groups, and we've got the rise of the alternative right in the US. So these are two concerns and they're both amplifying each other.
So anti-Muslim prejudice, this is a problem that affects mainly women at a street level. What can the public in general do to help counteract this?
Well, there are a couple of things members of the public can do. One is to, if the incident is over and they see the Muslim woman, is just to go up to her and say, does she need any help? Does she need any assistance? That makes a difference. It makes a huge difference to victims. The second thing is, if the perpetrator is physically not intimidating, individuals may want to intervene. As long as they feel safe, they can intervene. And so, that's another thing we say. If you feel safe and the perpetrator doesn't intimidate you, say something, intervene. And the third and last thing is that any kind of assistance, even giving a mobile phone for a victim to call, saying if she's okay, sometimes on a bus going and sitting next to her makes a huge difference to the confidence of the victim that she's not alone, and that actually, people who are not Muslim do care.
Fantastic, thank you. Right, it's been great to hear your views on different topics today, and thank you so much for agreeing to answer my questions. And I'll just ask you to finish by just summarising your views on how pluralism can best be achieved and the part that your own work will play in this.
Well, I think the underlying framework for pluralism is actually communities valuing and standing with each other. I think when communities come together, when they carry out activities together, when they share time, space, food, all of these elements create a sense where each one of us has a unique space in our society. It gives a feeling that without one of us, we're not whole. And that's a really important element. So what I'm saying is pluralism is not complicated. It basically means that when we come together as communities, we feel that together, collectively, our experiences are the sum of us and not just a part of us as communities. And that's really important. That's the way I think many of us lead our lives. That's the experiences we have every day.
Fabulous. Thank you very much. And like I say, thank you for spending some time with me today.
Thank you very much, Roanna.